Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
The following is an independently produced program. The views and opinions expressed are entirely those of the producer and do not reflect those of Falls Area Community Television, its staff, or board of directors. Take a deep breath. Remember this is public access and carry on.
Secrets in the shadows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret cut beneath the undertone. Honest stories hidden in the dust. On this long road, in the truth we trust.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. I was originally planning on finishing up the part of the immigration at the 1880s to the 1920s and going to explain how much what's happening now is not much different from what was happening back then, and things kind of constantly repeat themselves. And people go and say, well, history repeats itself. No, history doesn't repeat itself. What happens is people look back in and go and say, what worked years ago and what didn't work years ago? And you know what? I'm smarter. I know better. I've learned. So I'm going to repeat what happened years ago, like Ronald Reagan saying, "Good morning in America, it's a new dawn, we're making America great again." Well, we have another president who is saying, we're going to make America great again. Okay? So we're trying to learn some of the stuff, and we're egotistic, and we think that we can do it better than what happened 20, 30, 40 years ago, and we're going to get it done. We're going to make it work this time. But it doesn't work because things change, situations change, people change, other people are more educated. Well, but what was happening this past week of what's been happening around the country, Los Angeles, and it was so easy to jump to conclusions one way or another. But as I was going and I'm looking at it, because, you know, I'm just really kind of the jerk that asks, can you prove that to me? What is your supporting documentation? Well, a lot of stuff that's been going on in the past week has no supporting documentation. If you go to, on the news, say over the past 3 or 4 days, they're talking about, yes, the President Trump, who's in his way of rolling back DEI, is returning all the army bases that were down south, and we're renaming them back to their original names. Okay, Reuters, AP, CNN, MSNBC, a whole bunch of them, they're all jumping on saying how the president is being racist and this and that. And, well, And of course, and if you go on Facebook, if you go on the different comment sections, you've got people all jumping on there and agreeing that the president is being racist and the president is doing this. Okay. The president and the Secretary of Defense may be racist, may be sexist, may be what do you call it? Anti-Christian Judeo religious. Anybody else who falls in that category isn't qualified or isn't as good. Well, but if you're going to say the president or the Secretary of Defense are racist or acting racist, make sure you line up your facts with your statement. Something could be factual, but by you using it in the wrong situation, you're wrong. Okay? So far, I haven't seen anybody, any of the news organizations, print a retraction of calling the president racist with his anti-DEI and renaming the bases after their Confederate generals and Confederate heroes. Okay. The President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense have now renamed all the bases back. So is that racist? There's a question there. Because are they say, hey, we're going to name them all back after Confederate generals. And some of the Confederate generals were the worst kind of people you want. But now people are saying Fort Bragg is Fort Bragg now. It's no longer Fort Liberty. So they changed these. Fort Polk, different ones. But let's, as Paul Harvey used to say, what is the rest of the story? Okay. Fort Bragg. Okay. Fort Bragg will be renamed Fort Bragg. No, it is not after the Confederate General, Lieutenant General Joseph Bragg. It's honoring a World War II hero, Roland Bragg. Fort Hood. Fort Hood will be renamed Fort Hood, honoring a World War I hero, Colonel Robert B. Hood. Fort Gordon will be renamed Fort Gordon, honoring a Medal of Honor recipient, Master Sergeant Gary R. I. Gordon. Fort Rucker will be renamed Fort Rucker, honoring Distinguished Service Cross recipient Captain Edward W. Rucker. Fort Polk will be renamed Fort Polk, honoring Civil Star recipient General James H. Polk. Fort A.P. Hill will be renamed A.P. Hill, honoring 3 Civil War Medal of Honor recipients, Lieutenant Colonel Hill, First Sergeant Penn, and Private Anderson. Fort Lee, Virginia will be renamed Fort Lee, honoring Private Fritz Lee. for heroism in the Spanish-American War. And Fort Pickett will be renamed Fort Pickett, honoring First Lieutenant Vernon W. Pickett, decorated for extraordinary heroism in World War II. So, all these, quote, top-notch organizations, news organizations, media organizations, in their rush to beat each other, in their rush to lay it out there, publish it before President Trump lands on Fort Bragg, to get it, they were all wrong. Okay? And here's the catch. They're saying something. President Trump and the Secretary of Defense and the other ones were leading this whole group of elected Democratic officials and these groups and all them in the military wise. Everybody was being led into a box canyon ambush. A box canyon ambush is where you're going through the canyon, and all of a sudden you find out, oh, the only way out of this canyon is by the way you came in. There is no way out. And you're ambushed. You didn't do your homework. And so, bingo. Now President Trump and people going in and saying, you know what? For the first time, we're naming Army facilities after enlisted people, junior officers, and some generals. Okay, did they have to do a lot of work? First Lieutenant Vernon W. Pickett, never heard of him. Hardly anybody never even heard of him. And probably a lot of people, his relatives, didn't even know about what was going on. Private Fritz Lee, Spanish-American War. Private Bruce Anderson, First Sergeant Robert Penn, Master Sergeant, Medal of Honor, Master Sergeant 1. Okay, who's Master Sergeant Gary Gordon? Well, if you watch the movie Black Hawk Down, that Master Sergeant that stayed there to protect the helicopter and save people's lives and died or get the Medal of Honor, that is Master Sergeant Gordon. Quality individual, well-deserving. Fort Gordon, named after the Medal of Honor, one is not being named after by someone who is nominated due to white supremacy. This was a guy who was put in there because he accomplished stuff. Okay? You say, if you were going to complain about racism, it wasn't about the names, what the racism is, or the culturalism or ethnicity is. Some of these places were named after people of color, people, ethnicities that fell under the broad Hispanic, which I don't like the word Hispanic because, like I said before, there's like 46, 47 different countries in the world that could fall under Hispanic. Okay, so Trump's people played everybody. Now that, again, when you go on and you see the riots that was going on in LA, I was living right down south of LA in 1992 when the Rodney King riots were on. What's happening in LA is nowhere near what 92 was. I think there was pretty close to 60 people that were killed in the riots. I heard one person say, well, yeah, there's like 65, 66 people been killed already. Oh, wait a minute. That was the number that was arrested. So again, we have the media and we have all this stuff going on. Everybody wants to get there first. Was the CNN guy, news guy getting arrested? Wasn't he? Or what was going on here and there? Very little fact checking. Very little fact checking. Another example, when I was listening to it, they were talking about how the ICE was raiding Home Depot. Well, ICE was not raiding Home Depot. One of the assemblymen in California was driving to an event, and there was stuff out and things that was going on saying, oh, there's a raid coming, We're seeing the people, they're getting ready for a raid. And it just snowballed and it snowballed and it snowballed. Okay? Again, when I lived in California for about 12 years, okay, you could go to a Home Depot, and yes, there were plenty of day laborers, illegal immigrants, illegal migrants, whatever you want to call them. But they were never on Home Depot's property, because Home Depot doesn't allow soliciting on their property. They may be across the street or they may be down. So you could go see a white contractor, go up, get his truck loaded up at Home Depot, and there might be a van right behind him. So when they pull out of the Home Depot lot, and the van may pick up 8, 9, 10 workers. Hey, come on. Okay. Yep, that was common. All the time I was in California, that was common. Okay, so rumors were going fast and flurry. Then, the ICE czar, the immigration czar, or the deportation czar, whatever you want to call the individual. Oh, no warrants, none of this, none of that. Okay, if I'm a police officer and I have a warrant, a federal knockdown warrant to arrest somebody, and that individual, so they come in and I go to the house. We smash down the door to get suspect number 9. Okay? So I arrest suspect number 9. But while I'm arresting suspect number 9, there's 25 other people that committed crimes. Now I'm allowed to arrest every single one of them without having a warrant. They were located for someone who had been had a warrant out for the arrest because they were a suspect in a crime or a fugitive for justice. So here it is. The ICE czar is on Good Morning America, not Good Morning America, MSNBC with Joe Scarborough, who used to be a Republican congressman from Florida, but he was able to drift towards the middle and maybe over to the liberal side when he married Zabrisky's daughter, and he worked for a company that was kind of on the liberal side. And he's asked, did you have a warrant? Yes. We did have a warrant. We had a federal warrant for 3 individuals. One was for a Vietnamese guy, one for an individual that was suspected of money laundering. And so what they did, okay, they went in looking for these 3 people with a federal warrant. And when they arrested these, look, I don't know if they got these people or not. Excuse me. But using the federal warrant, they were able to arrest a number of other individuals who were in the country illegally. But so now Warren, they come busting in. No warrants, no nothing. Misinformation. And it kept going on and going on. Did they have a warrant? Well, it appears they had a warrant for the 3 places. Bingo. Okay. Non-factual information being put out by the press. Not complete information being put out by ICE, Homeland Security. And it comes to like the old Perry Mason, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. For example, I tell you 9 factual things, but the 10th one, the 10th truth, leads you to a totally different conclusion. So if I tell you 9 truths, and I know based on that 9 truths, the vast majority of people are going to come up with the wrong conclusion, questioning, am I lying or I'm not? Okay? Some people would say, I'm a lying by omission. Or I could say, well, if you would have asked me that question, I would have gave you the truthful answer. But you never asked me that question, Your Honor. You never asked me that question, sir. Okay? Okay? Before I came here, I was watching on TV. Right now, it's probably over now, but it could still be going. Is ICE with the Omaha and the Nebraska police are conducting on a raid on a meat packing plant. The guys went in, and then there was like 2 or 3 people trying to jump in front of a nice vehicle to stop it. You know, you're looking, well, you know, if the guy accidentally hits the gas instead of the brake, that person is going to be laid out flat in the road. One guy goes in and pushes the ICE guy. The ICE guy pushes him back. And they're just going. And they're going, you got a faith-based, they just came in, no warning, they're doing this, they're doing that, they don't have a warrant. Then they're talking to a woman. She says, yeah, someone came in, ICE is coming, get out, run. So I went in and I told people, get my ICE is here. Get out, run. Well, that woman just committed a crime because she was aiding and abetting people who committed a crime to escape apprehension. Okay. But then she goes on and it says, yeah, they came in and took all our pictures and they didn't ask for fingerprints or they just took all our pictures. Okay. She says, what about those people over there? Oh yeah, they're all from Honduras. They're really scared they're going to be deported. Okay. She says, well, what's going on? She says, oh, my bracelet. She had like a green, lime green, fluorescent green bracelet. She goes, well, they're going through every single one of us. Everybody who can prove they're American citizen, she goes, I was born here, are given a green bracelet. And they're good to go. Everybody else falls into a different category. Okay. Again, we don't know. Did ICE go in after a specific person? Did ICE have a warrant for one person they were looking at? Especially if that one person had committed a crime besides illegal entry or overstaying a visa in the United States. Or maybe they were going in and had a warrant against the owner of the meatpacking plant in hiring illegals or undocumented. So, again, way is, all I have to do legally, go, hey, I have a warrant for this one individual, and everybody else that's in the crime scene can be looked at. Okay, is it legal? Yes. Is it morally, ethically? Is it manipulative? Yes. Okay, but it's playing on the factor Trump's people understand that the vast majority of American people can't get past 5 seconds or 10 seconds of a news story or a text to get the rest of the story. Okay? So he goes, well, the president is nationalizing 700, well, he's bringing in 700 Marines out of 29 Palms into LA. He can't do that. The 700 Marines he's bringing out from 29 Palms into LA are being deployed on federal property. The President of the United States has the ability to do what's necessary to protect federal property. Okay? The mayor of Los Angeles is responsible for all non-federal property in Los Angeles County. If the county police, the LA police force is has more people than a lot of armies around the world. If they can't get help, they can go in and go, hey, Governor, I need people. Okay? And then the governor can call up the National Guard and do that. When the governor calls up under the National Guard and does it, it's under his command and it's under his own dime. The President of the United States is calling up National Guard to protect federal agents and federal property. The President of the United States is paying for those National Guard people. They were talking about one of the comptrollers from the Department of Defense said it'll cost about $134 million for 60 days. Okay? So, it's not like the Marines, like the movie, it was like 2011, when the aliens attacked LA and they had to bring the Marines in to defeat the aliens. No. The mayor of LA's responsibility, the Marines are not taking over any of the mayor of LA's responsibilities. Okay? If the federal building in Manchester was under threat, the president could bring in Marines to do that. He could bring other Marines to do that, or he could bring federalized National Guard. And there's a reason. I'm trying to remember how we did it because we did a bunch of study. There's a whole bunch of things. Marines fall into a different category than the Army. One of the responsibility of the Marines are to protect U.S. property and civilians worldwide. So if we send a battalion of Marines, if there's a war, if say X country, there's a major revolt in that country, and American, the embassy property, American people are in trouble and everything, you can send the Marines in without it being considered a direct declaration of war or an invasion. So here again, the Marines are there to protect federal property, to protect federal employees. And so, again, what people should be doing, especially with AI and all this other kind of stuff on, before you're rushing out to provide information about what the Marines are doing and what they can't do and why they're doing, is be careful. Do your research, because what you're doing is you're creating a lot of misinformation, which are causing these people to go, yes, yes, we're causing riots. Right now, basically, there's a potential of riots in about at least 35 different cities around the United States, is because the president has directed the ICE czar that he wants 3,000 people exported every day. And you know where most of those people are? They're in blue areas. So he wants them, and ICE is going to get them. And what will happen, and is what's happening in California. Yes, I like the rule of law. I know law, the more money you have, the more powerful you have, the different laws you have to go through, or don't apply to you. But this is where I'll probably tick off somewhat the far left. I do not accept, condone, or whatever watching illegal aliens standing on burning vehicles or broken down vehicles waving Mexican flags. No. Okay? That's not what it's supposed to be. I didn't spend 21 years in the military for someone to illegally come into the United States, commit illegal actions, and then the mayor and the governor of California to say it's all right. I don't agree with the governor of Massachusetts or the mayor of Boston taking executive actions. Why haven't they been doing this to take care of a lot of American citizens? And when I go and I see, yes, Gavin Newsom is going to be the voice of the opposition to Trump. There are a lot of things that we can be opposed to that President Trump is doing and doing wrong and is not benefiting the country. But to pick the hill to die on is defending people who are rioting in our cities. I'm trying to come up with a thing. Okay, why Then we have the the president of Mexico saying, you know what? You're criminalizing immigration. And plus, you know what? Your economy needs these people, us Mexicans. Well, what we as a country should be looking at for is how come we're not punishing any of these big corporations, these factories, these meat packing plants, these farmers, these dairies who are making record profits by hiring illegals. Okay? The reason the president of Mexico is complaining is because her country gets billions and billions of dollars from Mexicans working in the United States who go to Walmart and get a Western Union telegram, MoneyGram, and wire that money right into a Western Union place in Mexico. So, hey, if I go in, if I'm an illegal, I work in and say I make money and I wire $1,000 a month home to my family in Mexico so I can greatly increase their standard of living. Well, an additional $1,000 a month for a lot of American full-time workers is not going to increase their standard of living. They may be able to go live month to month instead of week to week paycheck, but $1,000 a month going down to Mexico, El Salvador, Panama, Guatemala moves you way up to the top. And so I just really find it hard. President Trump is playing the Democratic people in leadership positions. He's playing them like a fine violin. He knows they're going to react to the simplest misinformation or even false stuff going out. He knows they're going to react to whatever he puts on social truth. And he knows it. And then we've got the people who come and say, well, this is what our base wants, what our base wants. I don't think the Democratic base wants this. The Democratic base does not like how it's going or how Donald Trump is doing things. But the Democratic base wants a lot of people exported out of the United States. But it's not the, when I go and I watch how Democrats are worrying about this, worrying about that, and the Secretary of Defense says, well, you know what? If it happens in other cities, don't be surprised if we put troops there too. Okay. Again, the federal government has the right to put people around federal property. There's a lot of questionable whether And when you look at the Constitution, whether federal troops, military troops, have the ability or the authority to arrest people. And the way I was taught was you can use federal troops to protect local policemen, but the authority to arrest remains under local police unless there's martial law established. And the criteria for martial law is extremely high. It's so we have people, tempers are flaring, going all over the place. In the meantime, the president is doing everything he can to get his one big beautiful bill passed. And a lot of Americans they don't have much of an idea how much their life is going to change if that one big beautiful bill passes. There'll be less food stamps. There'll be less free and reduced school lunches. There'll be less health care. Even in the state, there'll be less money for federal money coming down to help support public education. They really don't want to keep FEMA going. The president says FEMA will only last until the end of the hurricane season. And FEMA and Congress will no longer have control over how much money FEMA will pay out in disaster relief. The White House will determine who gets what and how much. So the President of the United States wants to say, hey, we want to, everyone who has born between when the bill passes until the day I get out of office, all American citizens with a Social Security card, on the day they're born, they will get an account for $1,000. If they don't put a single penny in, and it goes up with the average stock market, I mean the Standard Poor 500, by the time they're 20 years old, they'll be worth $8,000. Well, 20 years, 8,000. Well, the Standard & Poor is going up like something like $700,000 since the 1950s. But the buying power is only about $8,000, the difference between the last almost 70 years. So there are so many different things going on. And what are we worrying about? We're worrying about ICE and what ICE is doing. Saturday, Donald Trump's 79th birthday. Isn't it kind of strange? Donald Trump is really kind of the same age that we were complaining about Joe Biden losing it. So, and it just so happened that they're going to have the big parade in D.C. celebrating the Army's 250th anniversary or birthday. Down D.C. Donald Trump says if anybody protests or anything, they're going to have to pay a big price. The federal taxpayers are going to pay about $35 to $45 million for this. And so it's supposed to be like missile launchers, rocket launchers, all kinds of stuff, uniforms throughout the history of the Army. You know, kind of something that you expect in Russia or North Korea or maybe Iran. You know, places like that. But he's the president, and at the same time, well, it looks like more and more of the news organizations are saying they're going to cover very little of the parade. But at the same time, as of 12:30 today, at least 1,800 cities in towns across the United States are going to hold No King Day protests this weekend against President Trump's parade. When I look at the map of it, it's every single state is going to have some of these protest parades. And yep, some up even into Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico. Florida is blackened out. A lot of the deep red South, the MAGA country, is blacked out. A lot of MAGA people are getting scared watching what's happening with the President Trump. And all I could think about as I was reading a bunch of the stuff was, for our old folk, back in the 1970s, the United States, we had so much pollution, so much litter, everything. We even had the Erie River catch on fire because it had so much crap. We had the Native American chief crying because America had been so polluted and stuff. And then there was a cartoon. The cartoon was called Pogo. It was a play on some words from the War of 1812. We have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. It's Pogo and his friend trying to go for a walk in the forest, and they can't go because there's so much litter and stuff. So to me, where we are right now, we are in a Pogo moment. We have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. We, as the American people, wanted as much as we could get for free or at very reduced cost from the government. And our politicians, the elected leaders, gave it to us. They were the candy men and women. They were the pushers. They gave us what we wanted or what we thought we wanted and said, hey, we'll keep putting the bill over here, putting the bill. And now, look what we got. We got a small group of people that have unbelievable wealth. We got a small group of individuals that has unbelievable power, whether it's at the city level, the state level, the federal level. We have court judges that do what they want to do or what they think is in their best interest. And we always kept saying, no problem, they're on our side, they're on our side, they're on our side. Well, hopefully we've been learning is that if we want the country, we have to study, we have to read, we have to research, we have to think for ourselves. We have to stop accepting misinformation, false information. We're just being manipulated, and we enjoy being manipulated. There's one thing, if you study history, what did tyrants know? This is what you do to keep people happy. You give them a job, you give them a place to live, you give them distraction, you give them sex, you give them some alcohol, and they'll be happy. And also, always give them a scapegoat for them to blame. If we want to change it, we have to think for ourselves. We have to ask questions. Otherwise, I don't care what media it is, they're not going to feed you the truth. And like I said, I don't want you to believe anything that I say. I want you to challenge me on everything I say. I want you to go do your best to prove what I'm saying is total BS, falsehood. Think for yourself.